The October rain fell softly on Catherine's fresh grave as I stood alone, clutching her favorite white roses. Our son Thomas's Instagram story showed him lounging by a Vegas pool, champagne in hand, celebrating his tech startup's pre-success funding round, whatever that meant. I'm William Barrett, 68 years old, and I'd just buried my wife of 43 years without our only child present. The funeral home's chairs sat empty except for a handful of loyal friends and Catherine's sister Marie, who kept glancing at the entrance, hoping Thomas would appear. He didn't. The letter in my jacket pocket weighed heavily. Catherine's final message, written 6 months ago when her cancer diagnosis turned terminal. Open this when Thomas shows up asking about money, she'd instructed. Not before. I didn't have to wait long. 3 days after the funeral, Thomas burst through our front door without knocking. Behind him stood Marcus Fellows, his startup co-founder, clutching a leather portfolio and wearing the kind of suit that screams trying too hard. "Dad, we need to talk about my trust fund," Thomas announced, not bothering with hello, not mentioning his absence from the funeral, not showing an ounce of grief for the mother who'd loved him unconditionally. "Your mother just died," I said quietly, setting down my coffee mug. The morning paper still lay open to Catherine's obituary, the one Thomas hadn't bothered to read. "I know, and I'm sorry I couldn't make it back," he said, his tone suggesting he was discussing a missed lunch date rather than his mother's final farewell. "But we have a situation that needs immediate attention." "Marcus?" Marcus stepped forward, opening his portfolio. "Mr. Barrett, we're at a crucial juncture with our startup, Quantum Leap Tech. We've got interest from major investors, but we need to show significant capital backing." Thomas's trust fund wooled. "The trust fund your mother set up for your future," I interrupted, looking at Thomas. "The one that's not accessible until you're 40. "That's what we need to discuss," Thomas said, pacing our living room like he used to do when asking for a larger allowance in high school. "We need that money now. The company's future depends on it." I glanced at the photographs on our mantel. Catherine holding newborn Thomas, Thomas's graduation, our last family vacation before the cancer. She'd known this moment was coming. That's why she'd written the letter. "How much?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "All of it," Thomas replied. "The full $1 million. But it's an investment, Dad. We're talking potential billions once we go public." "Marcus has the projections." "Show me your current finances first," I said. Marcus shuffled through his papers, but Thomas cut him off. "We don't have time for that. Dad, this is my future we're talking about. Mom would have wanted." "Don't." My voice was sharper than intended. "Don't tell me what your mother would have wanted. You weren't here when she was dying. You weren't here when she asked for you. You weren't here when we buried her." "I was working," Thomas exploded. "Building something. Creating a legacy. The company needs." "Your mother needed you," I said quietly. "She waited for you." The silence that followed felt heavy with unspoken accusations. Catherine had spent her final weeks asking for Thomas, making excuses for his absence, finally falling silent when he missed their last scheduled video call because of a critical investor meeting. "Mr. Barrett," Marcus interjected smoothly, "I understand this is a difficult time, but we're facing a unique opportunity. Our quantum computing algorithm could revolutionize." "Show me the company's current financial statements," I repeated. More shuffling of papers. Marcus and Thomas exchanged glances. "We're pre-revenue," Marcus admitted. "But our burn rate is completely normal for a tech startup at our stage. The prototype is almost." "How much have you burned through already?" Thomas looked away. Marcus cleared his throat. "The initial seed funding of $2 million is temporarily depleted." $2 million in 8 months, I said. "And now you want your mother's money." My money, Thomas corrected. My trust fund. I reached for Catherine's letter, still sealed in its pale blue envelope. Before we continue this discussion, there's something you need to see. The letter's contents would change everything, just as Catherine had planned. She'd seen this coming long before any of us and had prepared for it with the same quiet determination she'd shown throughout her life. But as I broke the seal, Thomas's phone rang. He checked it, then headed for the door. Emergency investor call. Marcus can handle the paperwork. Just sign whatever's needed to release the funds. Thomas, I called after him. Your mother wrote this for you. Read it to me later, he said, already halfway out. Some of us have to keep working. Can't spend all day dwelling on the past. The door slammed behind him. Marcus looked uncomfortable, but maintained his professional smile. Perhaps we could discuss the transfer details. I opened Catherine's letter, reading it silently first, watching Marcus's face as I did. By the time I finished, I understood exactly what my wife had orchestrated in her final months. Mr. Fellows, I said, before we continue, you should know that Quantum Leap Tech is now under federal investigation for securities fraud. His smile faltered. I'm sorry. My wife was thorough, I continued, gesturing to her letter. She hired investigators when Thomas first approached her about investing last year. She discovered quite a lot about your previous ventures. All 3 failed startups, each time with suspicious financial discrepancies. Marcus stood abruptly, gathering his papers. These are baseless accusations. The SEC disagrees, I said. They've been building a case for months. Catherine made sure they had everything they needed. Bank records, false statements, evidence of previous investor fraud. This is absurd. Marcus sputtered. Thomas and I are partners. You've been stealing from my son, I corrected. Using his connections to access wealthy investors, then funneling money through shell companies. Catherine found those too. Marcus backed toward the door. Thomas won't believe. Thomas will see the evidence. All of it. Catherine left quite a paper trail. I held up her letter, along with a message for our son about trusting the wrong people. After Marcus fled, I sat in Catherine's favorite chair, reading her letter again. My dearest William, if you're reading this, then Thomas has come asking for his trust fund, likely with Marcus Fellows in tow. I've spent the past year investigating their operation. What I found broke my heart, but it also showed me how to save our son from himself. The trust fund they're seeking doesn't exist anymore. I restructured it months ago, with ironclad conditions Thomas won't be able to meet until he learns the lessons he needs. The money is safe, but he'll have to earn it through actual work, not schemes and shortcuts. More importantly, I've provided the SEC with evidence of Marcus's fraud. By the time you read this, their investigation should be nearly complete. Our son will be angry at first, but this is the only way to open his eyes. In my office, in the false bottom of my jewelry box, you'll find everything. The real trust documents, the evidence against Marcus, and a letter for Thomas that explains why I had to do this. Give it to him when he's ready to listen. Love him through his anger, William. He's lost his way, but with your help, he'll find it again. All my love, Catherine. I folded the letter carefully, knowing the storm that was coming. Thomas would rage when he learned the truth, but Catherine had known that too. She planned for everything, protecting our son's future by destroying his dangerous present. The SEC's call came within the hour, confirming that Marcus Fellows had been arrested trying to board a flight to the Cayman Islands. Thomas's phone went straight to voicemail, but I knew he'd return eventually, probably angrier than I'd ever seen him. I went to Catherine's office, found her jewelry box, and retrieved the additional documents. The new trust structure was brilliant. The money would be released in stages, tied to specific achievements, completing a legitimate business education, maintaining steady employment, demonstrating financial responsibility. Catherine's letter to Thomas was longer than mine, filled with the kind of tough love only a mother could manage. She detailed every discovery about Marcus, every red flag Thomas had ignored, every lesson he needed to learn. I couldn't save you from this pain, she'd written, but I could save you from losing everything to people who would prey on your ambition. Someday, you'll understand that this was my final act of love. The call came at midnight. Thomas was at the police station, demanding I come down immediately. Marcus had been arrested, their company accounts frozen, and federal agents were combing through their office. I found him pacing the station's waiting area, his Vegas tan now pale under the fluorescent lights. "This is a mistake," he insisted before I could speak. "Marcus says that SEC's got it all wrong. We need to hire lawyers, get the trust fund money to fight this." "Sit down, Thomas," I said, pulling out Catherine's letter to him. "Your mother has something to tell you." "Mom, what does she have to do with this?" "Everything." I handed him the envelope. "She spent her last year protecting you from Marcus. Read it." His hands shook as he opened the letter, his face cycling through confusion, anger, and finally, devastating realization as he read Catherine's detailed account of Marcus's fraud scheme. "No," he whispered. "This can't. We were building something real." "Marcus has done this before," I explained gently. 3 other startups, 3 other groups of defrauded investors. Your mother hired private investigators when you first mentioned him. She found everything." Thomas sank into a chair, the letter crumpling in his grip. "The trust fund. Restructured. Protected. Available when you're ready to build something legitimate." "She knew," he said softly. "She knew, and she was trying to tell me. But I was too busy. I didn't even say goodbye." The first tears came then, not for his lost company or money, but for the mother he'd ignored in his blind pursuit of instant success. I held him as he broke down, right there in the police station, while Catherine's letter fell to the floor between us. The next few weeks were a blur of federal interviews, legal consultations, and painful revelations. The extent of Marcus's fraud was staggering. He'd stolen most of their seed funding, leaving Thomas to face angry investors and mounting debts. "How could I be so stupid?" Thomas asked one evening, sitting in Catherine's garden. He'd moved back home temporarily, sleeping in his childhood room while his life unraveled. "Mom tried to warn me about Marcus. Those video calls I kept missing," she was trying to tell me. "She did more than warn you," I said, showing him the investigation files from Catherine's jewelry box. "She documented everything. The fake technology demos, the non-existent patents, the embezzled funds. She saved you from going down with him." Thomas spent days reading through his mother's research, seeing how thoroughly she'd mapped Marcus's deception while fighting her own battle with cancer. The evidence she'd gathered had protected not just Thomas, but dozens of other potential victims. "The trust fund conditions," Thomas said one morning, studying the new structure Catherine had created. "They're like stepping stones." They were. Catherine had designed a path to redemption. Business ethics courses, mentorship programs, practical experience requirements. The money would come, but only after Thomas proved he'd learned to build something real. "Your mother believed in you," I told him. "Not the shortcut version Marcus sold you on, but the son she raised. The one who used to spend hours building complex Lego structures, refusing to quit until every piece was perfect." The SDC interviews revealed more about Marcus's scheme. He targeted Thomas specifically, knowing the Barrett family name would attract wealthy investors. Catherine had discovered this pattern in his previous frauds, always partnering with someone from a respected family, using their connections and reputation. "She kept fighting for me," Thomas said one night, holding his mother's final letter. "Even when I couldn't be bothered to visit her in the hospital. Even when I missed her funeral for a poolside party." The shame of that last part ate at him. The Vegas photos were still online. Timestamp proof of his absence from Catherine's funeral. He deleted his social media accounts the next day. Slowly, painfully, Thomas began to rebuild. He'd enrolled in the business ethics course Catherine had specified in the trust conditions. He took a junior position at a legitimate tech firm, starting from the bottom like she wanted. Mom knew I needed to fall, he admitted one evening. She could have exposed Marcus earlier, could have stopped me from wasting those 2 years. But she knew I wouldn't learn unless I felt the consequences. The garden became his thinking spot, just as it had been Catherine's. He'd sit for hours among her flowers, reading through her investigation notes, seeing how methodically she'd worked to protect him while her own time ran out. "I found this," he said one day, holding up a photo from his Vegas trip. It was in her files. She saw all my posts, all those stupid party pictures, right up until the end. The photo showed Thomas raising a champagne glass by the Bellagio pool, time-stamped the day Catherine had asked for him one last time. Her handwritten note on the back read simply, "He'll understand someday. Keep the evidence safe." Marcus's trial date was set for spring. Thomas would have to testify, facing his former partner and the full reality of their fraud. But Catherine had prepared for that too, documenting everything so thoroughly that Thomas's own liability was clearly minimal. She protected me legally, Thomas realized, reviewing the files with our lawyer. All these statements she gathered, the way she structured everything. She made sure I'd be seen as another victim, not a co-conspirator. The trust fund remained untouched, waiting for Thomas to complete Catherine's carefully planned steps. Each condition reflected something she tried to teach him. Patience, diligence, integrity. "There's something else," I told him one evening, revealing the last piece of Catherine's plan. "The trust isn't just money. She left you her research, her methods for exposing investment fraud. She thought maybe someday you'd use your tech skills to help other families avoid what happened to you." Thomas sat with that for a long time, looking at Catherine's detailed fraud detection protocols. "She didn't just try to fix me," he said finally. "She tried to give me a purpose." In her garden, surrounded by the flowers she'd tended until her strength gave out, Thomas began to understand the magnitude of his mother's final gift. She'd saved him from Marcus, but more importantly, she'd created a path back to the person she'd always known he could be. "I'm sorry, Mom," he whispered to her favorite roses. "I'm going to make this right." Spring brought Marcus's trial and Catherine's roses in equal measure. Thomas testified on a Tuesday, wearing his mother's favorite tie clip, finally facing the man who had nearly destroyed his future. "Mr. Barrett," the prosecutor asked, "when did you first realize Mr. Fellows had deceived you?" Thomas held up Catherine's letter. "When I read this. My mother spent her last year investigating him, protecting me, while I was too blind to see what was happening. She documented everything he had done, everything he was planning to do." Marcus sat stone-faced as Thomas detailed their fake startup's operations. The non-existent quantum computing breakthrough, the stolen investor funds, the elaborate presentations of technology that never existed. "Your mother's evidence is the cornerstone of this case," Agent Phillips told Thomas afterward. "She created a blueprint for detecting tech investment fraud. We're using her methods to investigate similar cases across the country." That revelation sparked something in Thomas. He spent evenings studying Catherine's investigation techniques, combining them with his actual tech knowledge, the real skills he had neglected while chasing Marcus's empty promises. "Mom wasn't just saving me," he explained one night, surrounded by her files. "She was creating a system to protect other families. These fraud detection patterns she identified. With the right software, they could catch schemes like Marcus's before anyone loses money." The trust fund conditions suddenly made more sense. Catherine hadn't just wanted Thomas to learn business ethics. She had wanted him to understand how to build something meaningful. 6 months after the trial, Thomas presented his first legitimate business plan. Not to investors, but to the SEC's fraud prevention team. He had created software based on Catherine's research, designed to identify investment schemes targeting family wealth. The Barrett Protocol, he called it, named after the woman who saw through Marcus Fellows when nobody else could. I found him in the garden after the presentation, sitting by Catherine's roses. "She'd be proud," I said. "Not just of the project, but of how you've changed." "I missed everything that mattered," Thomas replied, touching a rose petal. "Her last year, her funeral, all of it. But she never gave up on me. Even when I was posting pool party photos while she was dying, she was still fighting to protect me." The SEC adopted Thomas's software. Catherine's methods, enhanced by her son's technical skills, began catching investment frauds across the financial sector. Other families were spared what we had experienced. "Mr. Barrett," a young investor approached Thomas at a conference, "your mother's work saved my family from losing everything. We almost invested with someone using Marcus's exact playbook. The Barrett Protocol caught it in time." Thomas kept his junior position at the tech firm, advancing slowly but legitimately. Each trust fund condition was met through actual work, just as Catherine had planned. But his real focus was expanding her fraud prevention legacy. "She left me something better than money," he told me, showing off the latest version of his software. "She left me a purpose. Every family we protect, every fraud we catch. That's Mom's real inheritance." The garden flourished that year. Thomas tended it himself now, learning each flower's needs, finally understanding that real growth cannot be rushed. Among Catherine's roses, he built something she had tried to teach him all along: patience. Marcus was sentenced to 15 years. The judge cited Catherine's evidence as crucial, praising her foresight in documenting the fraud. Thomas sat quietly through the sentencing, holding her letter, finally free of the anger that had driven him to miss her final days. "The trust fund conditions," he said later, reviewing them again, "they're not just about money. Each step forces me to build real value, help real people." Mom turned my biggest mistake into a chance to prevent others from making the same one. Catherine's investigation files became a teaching tool at business schools. The Barrett Protocol expanded to protect family wealth across generations. Thomas spoke at fraud prevention seminars, sharing his mother's methods and his own hard lessons. "My mother died while I was posting party photos," he always began. "But she left behind a system to protect other families from what almost happened to ours. This is her legacy. I'm just the one who finally learned to carry it forward." 1 year after the trial, Thomas met the trust fund's final condition: establishing a sustainable business that helped others. The Barrett Family Protection Foundation now offers free fraud screening for family investments, powered by Catherine's methods and Thomas's software. "She knew exactly what I needed," Thomas said, standing in the garden on the anniversary of her passing. "Not just protection from Marcus, but a way to turn my mistakes into something meaningful." The roses bloomed brilliantly that day, as if Catherine were showing her approval. Her son had finally built something real, something that would help others long after the trust fund's last dollar was spent. "I wish I could tell her she was right," Thomas said, carefully pruning her favorite climbing rose. "About everything. The shortcuts, the fake success, the price of real achievement." "She knew you'd understand eventually," I replied, showing him one last note from her files. "She wrote this the day she finished restructuring your trust fund." The note was simple, written in Catherine's clear hand. "Thomas will learn that real legacy isn't built in a day. When he does, the garden will show him how to grow something lasting." Standing among his mother's roses, Thomas had finally grown into the son she had always seen behind his misguided ambitions. Catherine's true gift had not been protecting him from Marcus. It had been showing him how to protect others. "The garden needs new roses," he said finally. "Mom's varieties, but more of them. The foundation can use this space to show other families what real growth looks like. Catherine would have loved that. Her garden becoming a place where others learn to spot the difference between genuine growth and empty promises. Her roses, like her wisdom, still helped people choose the harder but honest path. My mother died while I was posting party photos, he always began. But she left behind a system to protect other families from what almost happened to ours. This is her legacy. I'm just the one who finally learned to carry it forward. 1 year after the trial, Thomas met the trust fund's final condition: establishing a sustainable business that helped others. The Barrett Family Protection Foundation now offers free fraud screening for family investments, powered by Catherine's methods and Thomas's software. She knew exactly what I needed, Thomas said, standing in the garden on the anniversary of her passing. Not just protection from Marcus, but a way to turn my mistakes into something meaningful. The roses bloomed brilliantly that day, as if Catherine were showing her approval. Her son had finally built something real, something that would help others long after the trust fund's last dollar was spent. I wish I could tell her she was right, Thomas said, carefully pruning her favorite climbing rose. About everything. The shortcuts, the fake success, the price of real achievement. She knew you'd understand eventually, I replied, showing him one last note from her files. She wrote this the day she finished restructuring your trust fund. The note was simple, written in Catherine's clear hand. Thomas will learn that real legacy isn't built in a day. When he does, the garden will show him how to grow something lasting. Standing among his mother's roses, Thomas had finally grown into the son she had always seen behind his misguided ambitions. Catherine's true gift had not been protecting him from Marcus. It had been showing him how to protect others. The garden needs new roses, he said finally. Mom's varieties, but more of them. The foundation can use this space to show other families what real growth looks like. Catherine would have loved that. Her garden becoming a place where others learn to spot the difference between genuine growth and empty promises. Her roses, like her wisdom, still helped people choose the harder but honest path.